Hi everyone, welcome to Ask Ferny Live. I am Fernando Marron, your resident spiritual person and intuitive. And on this program, we are going to discuss spirituality, like just spiritual conversation. We will, tap into our intuitions, and I will use my intuition to answer some of your questions towards the second half of our conversation together to give you some life advice and all of that stuff. So if you guys have a question, go ahead and submit your questions in the comment section below. And at a later point, I will go ahead and answer some of your questions. Now, I do want to say, be specific with your question. If you want to ask about a specific situation or circumstance in your life that you want my input or feedback on, by all means, go ahead and, type that in. Be mindful because your comments and your questions are public, so they are going out there. And if you don't want someone to know about your question, then you don't want to put it on this platform. But feel free to go ahead and post whatever question you'd like, and I'll get to it at some point. And your question can be about spirituality, it can be about your intuition, building your intuition or developing. It can also be about life advice. I can't get to all of your questions though, so I will handpick some of them, and I will try to give you as much information as I can. Okay. So I hope you guys are having a great week. I am just coming off of my cold now. I got sick. Actually, I've got a cough drop. As you can see, I've got something just to help me so that my voice doesn't crack too much during the program. I've also got my special tea here. So I've got my cozy chamomile just to help, just keep me calm and relaxed. We had work. I don't know if you remember from my last program. We were having work done in the house, and then the guys that were working on the house all got the flu. Like all the guys got the flu, and they stopped production. So it's been like just an insane like mess. Like everything's everywhere, and I told my friend because when during the Harvey event, her house was just a mess for about 3 months, and I'm like, I don't know how you were able to deal with this for that long because I'm going insane. I'm so used to having things kind of a bit tidy and a bit, more neat. And so things have just been everywhere. I'm like, okay, well, this is how it is. And this is how it is, right? I mean, if we were going to be, moving to Santa Fe, then this is probably going to be what the routine's going to be like, where things are just going to be a little bit everywhere until that's done. But, so I got sick after they stopped. I like 2 days later I got sick, and we were like insane trying to like disinfect everything, trying not to get sick. We were taking like we were taking, what was it, the emergency, and then we were also taking airborne just like every day. I was doing double dosages because when I would have to go out and deal with people, whether I was grocery shopping or whatever, I would have to take a double dose just when I got back, because I wanted to make sure my immune system was boosted so that I would be strong enough to fight off whatever cold came my way. Of course, I still got sick. I got a cold, and apparently everybody's getting sick. I don't I thought I had the flu, but I went through this really quickly. It took me three days, but I'm kind of at the butt end of it now. I had to have some of my appointments canceled, just because there was no way I was going to be able to get through them and then to offer the quality of service that I'm used to offering people. But so I'm done with my cold, and now we were scheduled to have the work restarted because the guys are finally coming over, getting past the flu, and then my partner's sick now, so we've had to like suspend work again and kind of wait until that's done, so then that way we can get back to what we were doing with the renovations and the work on the house. So it's been like it's been everywhere, but I'm just glad I'm not sick anymore, because I'm like, I'm still a little like nasally in the morning, and all that gross stuff is starting to happen, but it's done. So, but everybody seems to be getting sick, and I thought that would be a perfect topic for today's like spiritual conversation, because I actually early last week, I was having a conversation with one of my, I guess I could call them a guide. I really don't even feel like that's an appropriate word to call them a guide. There's a special energy that I tap into sometimes when I'm tuning in, and I've got questions about certain things with life and all of that. And there's a special someone that sometimes when I'm trying to understand something, or I'm trying to ask questions about specific issues, I kind of want a higher enlightened perspective. And so there's this. I don't even, it's not a person, because I can't even call it a person. It's more of an awareness. But it's called Asha, Asha. And there's actually a link to some of the conversations that I've had with Asha on my website. So you just go to my website, fernandomarron.com, and scroll down. I've got conversations with Asha, and we've had some interesting conversations. And so last week, before I got sick, interestingly enough, I had a conversation with Asha, or I was having that internal dialogue, because it's not like I'm sitting there talking to myself. It's like it's all happening in my head, but I'm sitting in front of a computer and I'm kind of typing out whatever comes to mind, or whatever it is that comes through whenever I'm pondering and I'm asking about these things. And I was actually asking about illness and how people get sick, and why do people have to get sick? Why do people have to be ill? It's like when we see animals in the wild, animals don't get sick very often, right? Animals, I mean, they get sick, but they don't struggle with these physical ailments the way that humans do. I think humans have quite a bit of it, that we have to struggle with, whether it's the common cold, whether it's cancer, all these diseases. And I mean, I'm sure if you talk about it from a physiological perspective, it probably has to do with diet and lifestyle and all of that other stuff. But even then, just today I was talking to my sister, and it's interesting that that came up today, because I was already planning on talking about this during our session today. But my sister texted me a little while ago, and she was talking to me about how she was at home yesterday walking her dog, and she ran into a neighbor she hadn't seen in a while. And when she ran into them, they were very upset and emotional, because they're a relatively young person. I mean, they're 40 years old, and they're going to have heart, I don't know if it's a bypass surgery, or they have to have their arteries, I think it's a shunt. They have to have no, I don't know what it is. It's like they have to have one of those things put in the arteries where it expands it and lets more blood flow. And so she was telling me about that, and how they didn't understand. They were so confused, because they were super healthy and they exercised and had a very active lifestyle. And so even though they were healthy and had an active lifestyle, they didn't understand why they were in the situation where they needed to have this surgery. And they were just in a state of shock. And even with the common cold, it's like when people get sick, it changes us. These conditions changes. And I think from a spiritual perspective, you kind of have to like rise above it, because from a physical perspective, it's just messed up, right? It's messed up that we have to deal with these conditions and these circumstances. I don't like being sick. I'm miserable when I'm sick. My partner's miserable when he's sick. I mean, we don't like being sick. We don't like feeling not good. And so a lot of times, and I've struggled to understand this myself. And this is where the conversation with Asha started, where it was interesting, because I asked, why do we get sick? Why do these things happen? And you can actually read the whole conversation if you go to my website and just go down to Asha. But I'm going to give you kind of a highlight, because sometimes I like to post highlights to some of the conversations, because they're very interesting, and then I'll address it here. So here's the highlight, and so I'm going to read it to you. Healing does not involve the body, mind, and spirit recovering itself from a damaged state. The process of healing is the remembrance of the self in its fullest and purest form, so that these circumstances of pain and lack can be peeled away to expose the actual you beneath. And so when I was going through the response with Aja, and I was like, I was kind of annoyed, because I was like, that's great that we, it's great that we are pure underneath, and that there's just like purity to us as spiritual beings. But does that mean that the moment that we recognize, oh, we're pure spiritual beings, or oh, we're amazing beings, does that mean the illness is going to go away miraculously? Is that suddenly, when you become aware of the purpose of the illness or the reason for those, will it go away miraculously? And so I was having this back and forth with myself and Aja in my mind, and it was an interesting dialogue, but I think I understand now, and I've spent the week kind of understanding more of it. And then I got sick, right? So being sick and then being in these circumstances helps me to understand fully why we as humans are, plagued by some of these conditions sometimes. And, you hear people say there's a reason for everything, right? There's always a reason for whatever, for everything that happens. But of course, most of us don't ever really find out the reason for whatever reason something happened until we are in a higher awareness, until we've passed on, and then we get to relive our lives, or we get to see things. At least that's what I believe, that we have a kind of a review of the things that we went through and experienced in our lifetimes, not only from our perspective, but from the perspective of those that we've also affected, both positive and negative. So we get that full experience there. But I think that, even though people say you have to do this to be healthy, and you have to do that to have, live a long life and all this stuff. There are people who die every day who are healthy. There are people who die every day who, are doing everything right and everything by the book. And, I was telling my sister, nothing is guaranteed. Nothing is going to prevent us from dying. Nothing is going to prevent us from becoming ill. Nothing is going to prevent us from these situations or circumstances, because it's kind of built into the game. It's built into this act, into this, show that we're a part of. And when I say game, I'm talking about like the world, the physical level that we live on as like physical human beings, having everyday experiences, dealing with human experiences. That's what I'm talking about, the game. And for me, it's in my head, I think it is a game sometimes, because, we take it so seriously, and it isn't. On a soul level, on a spiritual level, it's just a game for us as energy beings. But here we get so caught up in the circumstances we're going through that it becomes too much. It becomes real for us. But on a spiritual level, on a higher level, it's just a game. And so we kind of program some of these circumstances and situations into our lives because they give us unique experiences. They give us opportunities we wouldn't have really had before had we not had that. And I mentioned this, in my past video, I mentioned this in my last Ask Ferny, how we sometimes we program certain things into our reality, into our lives, because it's for a specific purpose on a soul level that is going to benefit us. It's going to give us perspective in certain ways. So this week I've been learning about disease and like illness and why we get sick. On a physiological level, on a physical level, there's reasons for that. But on a spiritual soul level, which I always try to understand things from that perspective and with the help of Aja, it's because it gives us a unique perspective. So people who get sick sometimes, people who go through certain illnesses, through certain conditions, gain a unique perspective because of that. And everyone's experience is different. Everyone's experience is going to be unique. I know people whose families have been mended because a person in the family became ill or sick, and they it brought people together to rally around that individual. I also have heard stories from clients where families completely dismantled and broke apart because someone got sick or someone became ill and people didn't know how to deal with it. And the issues that had already been there, it's not like someone gets sick and all of a sudden issues just pop up with the family. Issues have always been there with some families. But when someone's ill or there's certain circumstances that come into play, it brings those to the surface because they're not being dealt with. And then everybody is having a unique experience because of that. So it's serving a grander purpose. It reminds me of Shannon Doherty, her battle with cancer. If you don't know who Shannon Doherty is, she is a very famous actress from back in the late 80s, early 90s. She appeared in several different movies, and she was in 90210, and then she was also an actress on Charmed, one of my favorite shows. And so she has always been considered a bitch. She's always been considered this like really nasty female who is always getting into fights with her co-stars, is always getting into fight with production crews, et cetera, et cetera. And so she's always been known as this kind of person. But as time has progressed, we only get to see what the news outlets are putting out or what the gossip columns are putting out. We never really get to see behind the scenes, behind the curtain, what's happening in people's real lives. But she's very candid about her journey through cancer and overcoming that process. And she came out on the Chelsea Lately Netflix series talking about her battle and talking about her process and what it's been like for her. And I think one of the things that she talked about that resonated with me is that going through cancer was such a cleaning house process for her, because the people who were in her life before the diagnosis, she thought she knew who her friends were. She thought she knew who the people in her life really were that were the most important. And then the moment that she was diagnosed, and then she had to deal with the circumstances of chemo and radiation and battling cancer and losing her appearance and her look, her hair, all of that stuff, it really, she had to become much more dependent on those around her. And she had to really, really, she didn't have any time for the BS. She didn't have time to feed other people's egos. She had to deal with surviving. She was just trying to survive. And because of that, her life was, what she said, her house was cleaned up, and people dropped out of her life as if they were never there to begin with. And so she said she realized who the closest people to her were, and who the people who really were there for. And the most meaningful relationships, or the most authentic relationships, survived through this process. And she feels that this has actually made her a better person, that she's been able to overcome some of her challenges, and some of, it's changed her perspective on things. Now she's, gotten back into acting. She's been, she's cured, not cured, but she's gone ahead and overcome the cancer, and now she's getting back into a normal routine. But she doesn't really go back to a normal, because she has this unique perspective now, never had before. And now she understands the people around her and some of those relationships and what authenticity is. She didn't have that perspective before. And so in a way, this diagnosis and this path, this road through cancer has really helped to teach her some things, and helped her to understand some things about, not only about herself, but also about the world around her, about relationships and what's really important. I'm not saying, people who are struggling with cancer or dealing with it, you should go out and say, "Oh my God, I'm so joyful for cancer." No, like, if you're in it, if you're dealing with the illness, if you're dealing with the disease, and I mean, yeah, it's a struggle. It's gonna hurt. You're gonna struggle, and it's not gonna be easy. And I'm not here to make light of that, because that is a process. What I'm saying is, from a higher spiritual perspective, there's a different view of it. There's a different understanding about the process of a disease like this, and how it affects and changes your entire life. And so, with this guy who my sister was telling me about, her neighbor, I don't know what the reasons are for him getting sick. I don't know what's going on there. There maybe genetics have a role to play in that. Maybe he's been drinking too much of Houston water, right? I don't know. But it could very well just be that this is a soul assignment. He's going to go through a spiritual episode in his life, as you will, where he's going to learn some interesting things. And I think what Asha was trying to tell me was, at the moment that we realize the purpose this serves for us, what this is for us, then we no longer need that perspective. We no longer need that circumstance to help us achieve the perspective. Once you understand the perspective, once you grasp the perspective that you are being pushed into understanding, into comprehending on a human level, then the disease serves no purpose anymore. And that usually means that either someone will go through their healing process, which, you're going through a cold, you go through your healing process, or, you may ascend back into the energy state. I mean, it just depends on the individual. But when you achieve the perspective that is meant for you to achieve, when you get it, you no longer need the disease to help you understand that, right? You no longer need that. And I think that's what Asha was trying to tell me, but it took me like kind of a week to get that, to be like, oh, I get it now. Like, I totally get what Asha was trying to tell me. So very interesting perspective, guys. So thanks, guys, for tuning in. So I'm going to go ahead and answer some of your questions now. If you guys would like to ask a question about spirituality, about intuition and development, about life advice, any specific circumstance or situation you want to ask me about, go ahead and feel free to do that now. Be specific. I'm not a mind reader, although I do sense emotion and thoughts. I'm not a mind reader. I don't know everything. But I can pick up on detail and hopefully help you make sense of that. But go ahead and write your question in, and I will try to get to it. If you are writing about somebody else, be mindful. Your comments are being made public, and others will see your comments. So you just want to make sure that you're aware of what you're putting out there. And as always, if you do have a question about, a loved one who's passed away, or you'd like me to connect with them, this is not the platform for that. That would require a one-on-one. And at some point, I will do that, where I can connect with you guys through here, and we can do a split screen, and I can do a session for someone. But until then, I really won't be able to answer those questions here, because it's just not the place. But like I said, any life advice or circumstance or anything like that, I'm more than welcome your questions. Okay, so let me go over and see what questions we've got going on here. We've got Cynthia. Hi, Cynthia. Welcome. So we've got Cynthia here. We've got Janet. Hi, Janet. Nice to see you again. Let's see. Okay, so here we go. So Cynthia actually has a question. So I'm going to go ahead and let me bring this smaller here so we can, there we go. Okay, so Cynthia, so some strange things have been happening in my home, especially when I'm home alone. Is there something here, or is it all in my head? Neither. I don't think it's either. Well, yes and no. So I don't think it's anything that's there per se. Now, I do think that loved ones come by and visit from time to time. That's just a given. And when they're around, you're going to feel presence, or you might feel that energy around. What people tend to do sometimes is when they're having these kinds of experiences and something's going bump in the night in their home, they tend to lump every single experience together. Like if they have an experience on Thursday, July 25th, 2015, and then 2 years later, they have another separate experience somewhere else in the home, they automatically assume that those are somehow connected and it's the same person, and it's just one like ongoing saga. That doesn't always mean the same. That's not always the case. Is what I'm trying to say. It could be very separate situations or very separate things happening. Now, like I said, I do think that family members come and see you or come in and visit you in your environment. But I actually think that you are a very intuitive empath. I think that you energetically, emotionally pick up on energy. I also think that you don't always verbalize yourself emotionally as well as you would like. And I think sometimes when you are dealing with a lot, you internalize it more so than you express it. Now, the problem with this is that if you internalize too much, it builds and builds and builds, and then when you do finally express, it kind of blows, and then there's a large release of energy. It's kind of like a volcano. Now, on an energy level, because you are an empath, and I do feel you're intuitive, if you are building and building and building energy, then all of a sudden, like the energy can no longer be sustained in your physical person. Then what tends to happen is on a vibrational level, in an energetic way, the energy starts to split itself from the individual because it can no longer be sustained by that person. They're too full. They're at full and they can no longer take on any more of that same energy. So it splits off from the individual and then it becomes its own like separate energy, wave, entity, whatever you want to call it. So I think that some of the experiences you're having in your home actually are you separating from you and reacting, having its reaction, having its expression, as you will. And I think that's what's actually happening in your home. So I don't think it's really so much a separate entity. I think it's actually you, and the energy is just becoming so apparent to you, especially when you're by yourself, because you're the only one there. I once worked on a case where I went to a house and I was doing a walkthrough for the family because they thought that they were haunted. And when I went through the walkthrough, I kept feeling emotional energy. And if I feel a lot of emotional energy and it's just overwhelming, it usually means that there's one person in the household who's really sensitive, who's energetically sensitive, and they are essentially projecting themselves out of themselves, and they're not controlling their own emotions or the internal state. And so I noticed I it was really easy for me to identify this because I understood the energy. But when I asked the family, is this only happening when such and such person is around? And they all agreed, yeah, that it does only happen when they're around. Yeah, because it's a projection of their own energy. They're actually the ones who are causing this to kind of manifest and to build up in the space. Now, that kind of energy can actually attract other beings, other spirits, other ghosts. That kind of energy can attract it because ghosts are attracted to sensitive people like moths to a flame. There's just a lot of energy there, and they kind of need to feed on that because it helps them to feel alive. It helps them to feel connected to the human world, and so they will kind of follow you. They will be attracted to you. So your energy and what you're putting out is going to be attracting other individuals to you on an energy level. But I think mostly in this situation, Cynthia, I think it's more you than it is like an actual ghost or spirit that's kind of haunting your location. Okay, so let's go over to another question. That happy early Valentine's Day. Happy early Valentine's Day to you too. It's funny because I just read an article today that most, like over 50% of married couples do not celebrate Valentine's Day. And that is so true because my partner and I, we really don't celebrate Valentine's Day. We used to when we first got together. I think the first 2 or 3 years we would do stuff together. Like we would maybe like he would make me cupcakes or I would do something sweet for him or whatever. And now it's like, it's just, it feels very forced. And so we don't really do it in that way. We might spend a day together, like maybe like a few weeks before Valentine's Day or after Valentine's Day, and then do something then. But it's because we feel like doing it at that time, not because we feel forced because it's Valentine's Day. But no, I totally can agree with that because we're practically married anyway. So, yeah, I read that today and I was like, that's so true. That's so true. Let's see. Okay, here's one. Okay, here's one from Vera. So, hi, I do have a question. My sister-in-law Pilar and my husband are having problems with family and their mom. Do you see Pilar moving to Miami? So when I tune into this question, my feeling is that I do see Pilar stepping away or kind of being like disconnected, but not permanently and not long term. So I actually feel like there's going to be a little bit of a disconnect there where they may actually be separated by distance or be separated by circumstance, but not necessarily be apart in like romantically or relationships. So I wouldn't say that they're like going to break up or anything like that. I just feel there's just some time spent apart because of circumstances. I think this comes up right around April because I am seeing April as being a very significant month. I am seeing Florida now. So I'm going to say this is Florida, but I'm not sure this is Miami. This might actually be a little bit more north, possibly being closer to Fort Lauderdale. I wouldn't say this is Miami because I'm not seeing Miami proper. But I am seeing Florida, so I feel like this might still be Florida, but not necessarily Miami. But I do feel that there's just like this temporary type thing, and then they kind of. But I'm not seeing a move like a long move to Florida. I feel like this would be a very short thing, probably within a few weeks or maybe even 2 months at the most. Really, I don't see a long thing though. But April seems significant for this going on or some of this happening there. So that's my response to that. Let's see. She responded, so I'm glad you're feeling better. I'm glad I'm feeling better too. It's just weird because I feel so guilty when I have to cancel on people or reschedule their appointments because I'm like, people wait, right? They have to wait for their appointment. And I feel so guilty that I have to reschedule. But then I'm like, no, I have to because every time I do readings, like, the day that I had to reschedule, I had like 9 or 10 appointments that day. And I'm like a Starbucks barista, like I'm knocking out those lattes left and right, making sure everything's perfect, the foam's great, right? But when I have to do that, sometimes I feel bad because I feel like, okay, I'm disappointing people or they have to wait now. But then again, I'm like, you know what? It's better for me to do that because what's going to happen is I may do well with the first 2 or 3 appointments, and then my energy is going to drop drastically, and I'm gonna offer others, like the other people, they're not gonna get the best from me. They're not gonna get the best experience from me. I can do sessions if I've like lost my voice or something. I can work through some of that. But when I've like lost my voice and then on top of that I feel horrible and I'm having trouble concentrating or whatever, not a great situation for me to be able to read for other people. And it's interesting because when I'm sick, I actually have the most intense, interesting dreams, and I had some really interesting dreams when I was sick. So that was very interesting, and I actually acted on those dreams because I needed to. But just the whole process of trying to read for people, and people don't realize this, but whenever you do, like, psychic readings are less energetically taxing than a mediumship session. A mediumship session, I used to offer combo sessions where people could book like a psychic reading and a mediumship session together, and I stopped doing that because mediumship sessions require so much more energy. It's almost like taking two people and using one body. Like, that's what it is. And so I've got enough energy to support myself, and I do take like energy supplements and stuff to give myself extra boost of energy on, especially on days where I have mediumship sessions. But the moment that I do a mediumship session, I can hold on to a spirit's energy for maybe 30 minutes, 45 at the most, and that's pushing it. And then it's almost like a fish out of water. Like, they've got to rise back up to their level, and I can't hold that connection forever, which is usually why when I do a mediumship session, other loved ones will come in anyways because they have to stabilize the connection, and they're also kind of helping to stabilize the energy so that the other person can keep with me as long as possible. But then after that 30-minute mark, it is a drastically, the disconnection starts at that point because it's like a fish out of water. And so it's like two people using one person's body. And so they're, myself and the other spirit, who I'm trying to blend with, once we connect, they're using my energy resources. They're using all of my brain power. They're using my vitamins, my minerals, all that. And so my body starts to crash. And after a mediumship session, I have to like get up and walk around and like just bring my energy back to like normal, because I feel so like it's almost like a wire. It's like the wire's getting thinner, 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 and then I was like, okay, I have to break. Like, I can't keep up with this. So it feels like a marathon. You're running a marathon sometimes, and I have to go and get something that's like a piece of fruit or a piece of like food or something to snack on, just to get my energy reserves back up, so I can have the momentum to go ahead and go on to the next appointment. And so now I actually keep, those appointments separate now. So I actually have some time where I can prepare for the session for mediumship beforehand, just to energy get up to par. And then, of course, afterwards, I have a little bit of time just to make the switch over so I can go back to a psychic reading. Because psychic is more mental than it is physically like taxing. And a lot of people don't realize that there's a fine art to doing this work. And it just takes a lot out of you. So you have to make sure that you're very careful with how much you give to it and how much time you're taking off, because you do have to take some time off to recoup, or you were wiped. Like, you will wipe yourself out and then you'll burn out really, really quickly. So it's something that if you ever want to become an intuitive like myself, these are the things that you learn, especially through experience and time. So as I got, Shaw says hi. Hi, Shaw. Welcome. Let's see, Jenny, hello, love and light. Hello, Jenny. So let me go over to another question. Let's see. Okay, here's one from Maria. Hey, Fernando. So I'm really wanting to get into this company. Does it look like I have an opportunity? So when I tune into this, Maria, I'm not feeling it. I'm not feeling it, Maria. I'm actually feeling like what's going to happen is you'll be able to get into another organization that's similar, or the same kind of company, but not the actual specific company that you're wanting to get into. And here's what's kind of entertaining about that, which not just because you want to get in, right? It kind of reminds me of that movie, and I forgot what the name of the movie. I think it's called like Good Morning something. It was like a knockoff of Good Morning America, but it wasn't. And Harrison Ford was in it, and I think a couple of other actresses were in it as well. But this girl, she spends all her life because she wants to work for NBC. She wants to work for the Today Show, and she doesn't get into the Today Show. She gets a job with a competitor who isn't really doing that well. The ratings are kind of low, but she goes in there and she does an amazing job. And then her competitor would like to take her on at that point, because she has all the qualifications and she's done an amazing job where she was. I kind of feel like that something similar might happen for you, where even though you want to get into a specific company, I see you getting into another company that's kind of similar, and then you get a lot of experience, or you get some benefit from working there. And then if you try back with the company you want to get into, you might get in there. So I kind of feel like that may be something that happens. If that's already happened, then it's possible that I'm just kind of like backtracking and I'm telling you about the past, but I'm thinking this is the future. So as I'm trying to tune into the next 3 or 4 months, but I'm thinking this is gonna happen, not has already happened, where you worked for another organization that's similar and then you now are going to this, and this is your other attempt. But I'm kind of not seeing like you getting into this ideal company until you try a second time around after some experience, or more experience from what you've done. Okay, so let me go to another question. Here's one from Lisa. Lisa, do you see a long-term relationship for me anytime soon? No. So you're like gas over now. No, I actually see a relationship for you earlier next year. I would say maybe February, right around then. So I'm saying next year. So I feel like you'll be in a long-term relationship by next year. I'm not seeing one for you really right now. Even when I fast forward into summer and maybe early fall, I'm not seeing one either. You might try to reconnect with someone you've been with before during summertime. I'm not seeing that really going much further. But when we get to the end of the year, maybe November, December, I am seeing you talking to someone. And then it starts to go into more of a serious tone, going into early 2019. So I feel like early 2019, February or Valentine's Day, I think you'd be, it's a lot more likely that you'll get into a relationship at that time. Okay. So let me go over, I'm going to answer a couple of more questions. All right. So let's see. Here's one. Carmen, good Tuesday afternoon. I had a phone interview last week with a university and an in-person interview this Friday with a different university. Will anything positive come from either one for me? Yes. I actually think that you're probably going to hear back positively from both. I feel like one of them for sure, that you'll hear positively from one. I think it's not so much which opportunity is going to be best for you. I think it's going to be more about the program, or it's either the program or the let's just put the program or the setup that you'd be actually selecting. I think that's going to be the thing that you need to be more focused on, because I feel like you will hear something positive, at least from one of them. I'm thinking both, but from one of them. But I feel like you're going to have to be selective about which program you're going to go into, because there may be like more than one opportunity with one of the universities, and I feel like that's going to be the direction you probably go into. And it does feel positive for me, so I actually feel some good stuff happening for you there. Also, there may be a delay with when you're officially going to begin with them, meaning that even though you're going through this process right now, you may not officially be on the payroll, or you may not officially be in the system until the next school year, which would be like, well, I would say actually by summertime. So summertime. So there may be a little bit of a delay there, but you'd still be with them. But there is kind of like this delay, this weird delay that doesn't happen until summertime for you with them. So, but I do feel good about that. Okay. Uh, okay. So let's see. Okay. Okay. Let's see. Okay. So, Jessica. I just had a baby on Friday. He was 5 weeks early. So far, everything has went very well. Do you see anything we need to know about? The only thing, there's two things. I do think they're going to keep an eye on on the baby's respiratory system. I don't know if it's a boy or girl. I think it's a boy. I feel like they're going to keep an eye on the respiratory system, because the respiratory system is still just fragile, and so I feel like they've definitely got to help with that process. The only other thing that I think they're going to be concerned about is the heart function, or the heart, and like the circulation. My feeling though is that this is workable. Like there's a workaround with this, or they can work through this. But later on, like maybe at a later date, there is the potential or possibility that there might have to be some sort of procedure to stabilize something as the baby gets older, because the baby's so early. But my feeling is that this is going to go along with the aid of the respiratory system. But those are the two areas I'm more focused on. Um, Here's the thing. I'm not going to tell you whether the baby's going to make it or not. I'm not even going to go there, because you need to just keep yourself in hope. Everything seems to be going well, and I feel like there's a lot of potential here, and I feel like these are the two areas that they need to focus on, or that they're going to be focusing on. I don't need to be telling doctors what they need to be doing. I just need to be telling you what I'm sensing, right? The doctors know what they're doing. So I feel those are the two areas, but it's the heart and the respiratory system. Those are the two areas. But I feel like there's a workaround, or this is totally doable. So I do feel positive about this. Okay. So, and congratulations on the baby. So I'm sending you and your family lots of love, lots of healing energy. I'm actually going to say a little prayer right now, real quick. So just give me a second. Okay, so I'm just sending the baby some hearts of love, just to give it an extra boost there. So, okay, let's see. I'm gonna answer one more question. Okay, here's one. Ralph, hi Fernando. Do you see me working with my current employer through all of 2018? Thank you. Um, Something changes in September. I almost want to say you might find out about this around May or June, because I feel like around May or June there's communication about a potential change, and then something changes in September. What's interesting is the change in September. I don't necessarily think it means you're not going to be with the same employer, but I think that the circumstances or the situation get better, and because it gets better, I feel like after that things start to progress like in a better way. And whatever you're concerned about right now, it doesn't seem to be a worry at that time. So there's communication about something possibly changing in May or June, but the change may not actually happen until September. Once the change happens in September, I feel you feel better about it. So, and there's less worry there, or there's less concern, or there's less issue there. So it feels better in a way. So I actually think you may continue to work with them, but something changes in September that I think is going to make it better for you. So, okay. I have one more question. Let's see. One more for, let's see. I've got one from Latika. This is Latika from New York. I wanted to ask, do you see me moving and get different jobs so that I get better financial stability and need some clarity? I actually think you're going to have two opportunities. I think you're going to have one opportunity to move, possibly not like to a different part of the country. I'm thinking it's more just southern, like maybe Washington or some of that area, some of that region there. I don't see you moving though. I kind of feel like you're going to stay where you are because I think you'll have another opportunity come up where you are in the general area where you are. And I think that's going to work out better for you. So I actually feel you'll stay relatively put where you are, and I think May is going to be significant for that. So you might actually start something new or something changes with that in May, and I think that's going to be good for you. April May, it's around the April May juncture. But I'm thinking you're gonna stay where you're at. But I think you consider the possibility of moving kind of towards the more Washington area, in my opinion. So, all right, guys. Well, I love you. Thank you so much for joining in. I will be back next week. I hope that you guys do not get sick. If you do get sick, make sure you take your vitamins and your minerals or your emergencies so you can kind of boost up your immune system. But I love you, and I will see you next time. Okay? Bye-bye.